Welcome everyone to the Support for Caregiver Awareness, Learning and Empowerment or SCALE 8-week webinar series that aims to empower you with practical information and skills by enhancing your self-awareness and focusing on your own needs to improve your mental health and well-being as a caregiver. My name is Cleo Landemetz and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. I'm the program lead for mental health and well-being here at the Ontario Caregiver Organization. So sadly, this marks the last week of the SCALE 8-week webinar series, but we will be back in early May. And today's last topic of the series is called Time for Self-Care While Caregiving, which will explore how to integrate psychological and physical tools to manage your mental health daily. Now, I am pleased to introduce today's speaker, Michal Goldstein. Michal Goldstein is a registered social worker working at Dynamic Health Clinic in Toronto, where she sees adults for individuals, couples, and group counseling. She is also the founder of Creating Connections, a play-based therapy practice in Toronto, where she works with children suffering from mental health and behavioral challenges. She has over a decade of experience working with caregivers to support them in improving their ability to cope with the challenges inherent for caring for a loved one. Michal has developed numerous workshops and support groups programs utilizing knowledge of interpersonal neurobiology and mindfulness techniques to support individuals suffering from physical health, mental health, and parenting challenges. She is passionate about bringing evidence-based practice to the forefront of the clinical social work field. Michal knows both firsthand and from professional experience the challenges that come with caring for a loved one with a physical and mental health illness, and is grateful for the opportunity to bring more awareness, education, and support to this community. Thank you so much, Michal, for joining us again. I'll pass things over to you.
Thank you, Cleo. This has been an amazing few weeks, and I hope that you will benefit as well from today's webinar. So as Cleo said, this is the last week of our webinar series, the SCALE program. We will be returning in May to, start from week 1 and review all of the weeks that we've had for anybody who's missed any of the weeks, or I find that when you hear things after having gone through the program, they come out sounding a bit different, and we take different things from each of the weeks. So this week we're going to talk about self-care. And I know self-care is a concept that's, very widespread these days in terms of, the importance of self-care and how much it impacts our well-being. I want to take today a bit of a deeper look at self-care and how we can engender within us a mindset of self-care, rather than just actions that we complete, but actually incorporating into the way we think about ourselves and our situation. So the SCALE program includes the webinar every week on Tuesday at noon that I'm so happy you're all able to join us for. And then we have 2 online group coaching sessions during the week and one-to-one phone counseling. So these will again begin in May for any of you who haven't been able to have the opportunity, or for any of you who have and would like the opportunity again to avail yourself of these programs. The online group coaching sessions and the one-to-one phone counseling is also available in French, not by myself, through another therapist who is fluent in language. So this is the last week of our 8-week webinar series. The other weeks are available through the OCO's YouTube channel. And so you can just go on YouTube, search Ontario Caregiver Organization, and you can locate the video copies of the previous webinars. So when we talk about self-care, we want to think about how many of us are, guilty of chugging through our day and attending to our obligations, whether it be our kids, our family members, our, loved one that we're caring for, and we, cross things off our to-do list, rush between one thing to the next. We drive here, we go there, we're doing our errands, and we find ourselves at the end of the day feeling completely drained and pulled from every which corner. I'm sure that many of you are nodding your heads, yeah, that's me. Well, it's not just you. Unfortunately, it's not just you. And, our day-to-day life, because of the society we live in and how fast-paced things are and how accessible things are, right? You You want something on Amazon, you order it, it's at your doorstep the next day. Because of that nature of our society and the way that we live our lives, our list of commitments has actually grown and grown and grown over the years, because we can be here and we can be there in a matter of minutes, right? And what that leaves us is with our, metaphoric gas tank running on empty a lot of the time. And, most of us have heard about self-care and we know that it's important, but we might even have a few things on our list of things that I know those are the things I should do to take care of myself, right? That should. But one things I've heard over and over again from, caregivers I've worked with, other clients that I've worked with, is how do I fit this self-care that I'm supposed to be doing, these really great ideas of things that will make me feel better, how do I actually fit them in to my already packed day, right? Where do I find the time for this thing called self-care? And it's a valid question. It's a valid question because we often find ourselves, giving, as caregivers, especially, consistently giving to other people all day long at work and at home. And you wonder, where is the time supposed to be? Where is the time that I'm supposed to make for this, to prioritize these things that are about me, right? If you look at, your regular to-do list, we have your work, we have your, taking care of your mom or your husband or your wife or your child, whoever it is that you're caretaking for. You have, the obligation to clean your house, you have your laundry, you have to pay bills, you have your errands, you have your food prep, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Add whatever else, goes on your daily list of things that you must do because they're your obligations. And they're at the itty bitty bottom in, tiny little fine print is, oh, right, I'm also supposed to take care of myself, right? We consistently put this self-care as our lowest priority, that it's the last one on the list. And it's the one that unfortunately gets skipped entirely when we run out of time, because all of these things on top of it take the precedence. But what happens when we don't find time to fit self-care into our daily schedule? For any of you who have been on the group sessions or, in the one-to-one sessions, I've talked to many of you about, what are the things that happen? What are the things we see when we're not taking care of ourselves? What are the things that we want to look out for to notice that tell us we're not taking care of ourselves, right? I know for myself, I don't know about you, but I know for myself that when I'm not taking time for self-care, my patience level plummets, right? The ability that I have to cope with the same situation happening in a day, radically changes from one day to the next when I'm not engaging in self-care, when I'm not making sure that my needs are made somewhat get higher up on that list than the itty bitty bottom. What are some of the things that you might see happen in your day if you're not ensuring self-care? So some of the things that we see is low energy, right? A decreased energy, a feeling of hopelessness, having less patience for your situation, for the people around you. You might have increased headaches, stomach aches, and other physical symptoms of stress, which we talked about in week 2 of the webinar series in terms of the impact of stress on your body. These are some of the things that may happen when we have ongoing stress. A difficulty falling and staying asleep, another repercussion of our stress response being activated so intensely. Having a hard time kind of choosing healthy food or taking the time to make healthy food for yourself, and the urge to eat more comfort foods, quick, fast-paced, what can I grab, because you're not devoting that time. You might find a worsening of already pre-existing mental health conditions, symptoms like depression or anxiety, feeling of being burnt out, a difficulty concentrating, a strain or a distancing in your relationship with your spouse or partner or your other loved ones in your family that you're interacting with on a daily basis, less patience with your children, your parents, your sisters, your neighbors, your friends, reduced performance at work. So your ability to focus at work might be compromised, your desire to kind of put your all into activities You might also have less motivation to engage in social activities. So, think for yourself, what are some of the things that resonate with you on this list? What are the things that you notice in your life happening that might tell you that you need more attention to self, that your bucket is on empty, that your gas tank is running on empty, and that it needs to be filled up? So take a minute now to look at this list and maybe jot down for yourself, what are the things that you notice that tell you about how you're doing, how you're feeling, how you're caring for yourself. Maybe it's that your back starts hurting, that you get migraines. Maybe it's that you find yourself easily distracted, or you have a hard time sleeping. Just take a minute to write down some of the things that that you notice about yourself, like how I said, I notice my level of patience, right? That's what gets compromised, right? For other people, it's I have a really hard time falling asleep or staying asleep when I'm, more heightened. What are the things that tell you that you need a break, right? Need a break, burnt out. What are some of the things that tell you that? And this will be really an important piece of incorporating self-care into your life more fully. And that's why we want to kind of take a minute to take notice of what those things are. So the first step in self-care is finding out what do we need and what tells us that we need it. So learning, what are the signs that tell me I am drained? That's going to help you become more aware of what are the things that are draining me? What are the things that are making me feel that I need to be replenished, right? So enhancing our emotional intelligence is another key facet of self-care. So the first step is, let's notice what are the signs that I'm feeling burnt out and I'm running on empty. And then we're going to look at what are the things that are causing us to feel that way. Daniel Goleman defines some of the core concepts of emotional intelligence. And what he says is what I have here on the screen is the inability to notice our true feelings leaves us at their mercy. Knowing the difference between our feelings, being aware of our emotions, being aware of what's depleting us and what's difficult for us and what we're feeling in any given moment, that is something that tells us developing that awareness enables us to have choice within those experiences, right? If I don't know what I'm feeling, it takes control. If I don't know what I'm feeling, then I just lose my patience and I have no understanding of why. So emotional intelligence can be understood as being comprised of your ability to understand your emotions, understand others' emotions, regulate your emotions, and use your emotions to actually improve yourself. These are some components of emotional intelligence. So how do we gain this emotional intelligence? How do we learn to notice what our true feelings are so that we don't have to be left at their mercy, so that they don't control how we make our decisions without us having any awareness of what's happening? So I want to go through a little exercise of some questions to ask yourself that help us identify how we're feeling in any given time. You might ask yourself, how good am I at identifying how I'm feeling? Right now, if you were to ask yourself, how am I feeling? Would you have an answer for that? Would you be able to identify what feeling you're feeling? How well do I know whether I'm happy? How well am I able to notice when I'm angry, sad, bored, etc.? How good am I at identifying my emotional mood swings, right? When I'm here, when I'm there, when I have more, emotional swinging. How well do I know why I have these certain feelings? So the first step is being aware that I'm having the feeling and what feeling I'm having. And then how well do I know why I'm having these feelings? Why I'm feeling more triggered, is a common word used in this moment, and feeling more upset in this moment or happy in this moment, right? We're not just talking about difficult emotions. We can be talking about very pleasant emotions as well. How well do I know why some days I wake up and I'm feeling more positive, or I go through the day and I'm feeling more energetic? How well do I know that about myself? How good am I at finding the right words to use to express my feelings, putting a name to that feeling? And in which way do I express my emotions? What are the things that I can do that help me feel more connected to my emotions? Is it by writing in a journal? Is it by talking to a friend, right? Is it by artistic expression, right? What are the ways that I can express my emotions that are meaningful to me? And do I have awareness of that, right? So all these questions lead us to, answering these questions for ourselves, being able to go through these and answer these questions, help us develop our emotional intelligence. And many times when I review these questions, it's surprising to see that we don't always have the answers, right? We don't always know these things about ourselves. And despite how self-aware we typically feel, we don't necessarily have these answers at all times. And being able to identify these things helps us identify when it is that we may need more self-care. So now we've talked about what are some of the symptoms that may appear if you're not providing yourself with care the way you need to. And we've also looked at the emotional experiences that may lend someone to need more self-care or any self-care at all in any given moment, right? So, jot down for yourself right now, if you can have the answers to any of these questions. If any of these ideas sort of speak out to you, how do you express your emotions? Are you good at finding the right words to express yourself, or is that something that you need to get better at? I provide a lot of my clients with, a sheet of different emotional expressive statements and words to be able to just, something that you can find online. You can find emotional word lists. And they're just words that you can use to express what you're feeling in any moment. Or, when I'm feeling angry, sad, happy, excited, do I have a sense of why I'm feeling these things? So in having that reflection, do you feel that perhaps your emotional world needs more exploration? And what are some ideas of how we can go about doing that? And that's something that I want to talk about. But before we get there, I think it's very important to raise one more foundational concept within self-care, which is that of self-compassion. Now, we had a whole webinar on self-compassion, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. And, I encourage you, if you haven't already, to go, view the video of that on YouTube. But understanding self-compassion really keys into our understanding of self-care and how we relate to ourselves. Self-compassion, for those of you that don't recall or have words on the webinar, entails being warm and understanding towards ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than ignoring our pain or flagellating ourselves with self-criticism. We want to engage in a warm and understanding dialogue with ourselves. We want to treat ourselves with the care and concern that we treat others, right? And that plays a role in how we think about ourselves and our permission, if you may, to take care of ourselves when we're feeling some of those emotions that we just expressed on that last slide. So self-care is actually an actualization of all the things that we spoke about in all of the webinar series, and most significantly within the concepts of self-compassion, right? So looking at talking to ourselves with the same kindness that we would speak to other people. Our poor self-care is the physical, spiritual, emotional, workplace manifestation of the same thing as the way that we talk to ourselves and our negative self-talk and our self-criticism. Our poor self-care is a physical expression of that same mentality. And engendering a mentality of self-compassion entails understanding ourselves in a different way. So when we talked about self-compassion, we talked about the 3 components that are involved in self-compassion. And the first one is noticing your suffering. And that's exactly that emotional awareness that we just spoke about, right? Having that understanding of self, having the understanding of what is depleting you, what is causing you to feel, upset or angry. What are the things that are happening in your life? That emotional awareness brings us to a place of being able to ensure that first stage of self-compassion. And without noticing our suffering, we can't tend to it. So gaining that same emotional awareness of noticing your suffering, that's crucial. That's a crucial component of self-compassion. It's the same component that's necessary to engender self-care. And the next of the 3 components is treating yourself with kindness and care. So it's not just in the way you speak to yourself, but it's also about the way you relate to yourself. And how far down that list that we made before of all the other obligations that you have is self-care. And what does that tell us about the way we're relating to ourselves? That taking care of ourselves is all the way on the bottom and is the insignificant, quote unquote, insignificant thing that gets brushed to the side when we're feeling overwhelmed. And the last of the 3 components, just for review, is to remember that you are human and that imperfection is part of the human experience. And so to know that if I'm feeling tired, if I'm feeling hungry, if I'm feeling like I need connection, that those are part of being human. And that just as you would give that to other people that you know need that in your life, the people that you're sharing that care with, that same care and concern and kindness needs to be turned inward towards ourselves. So you may be asking yourself, well, how do I do this? The first step is coming to the acceptance and a strong realization that you cannot pour from an empty cup. That if your gas tank is running on empty, you don't have what to give to your other obligations. And it's not just about, you get these memes, they go around and you see them and, oh yeah, that's important. Self-care is important. It's about actually internalizing that concept and making a commitment to yourself, as we talked about in, the beginning of the webinar series, to put yourself in the middle of that circle, to make an internal, strong internalization and realization of the truth of this statement. That as much as I want to be able to do all the things on that list, as long as self-care is on the bottom, I will be doing with resentment, with frustration, with a lack of patience, with anger, with feeling depleted, all of those repercussions that we spoke about a few minutes ago. So if any of you who saw the first webinar would have seen this image that I pulled up of a red figure with these gray figures around them. What I want to talk about today within the kind of ABCs of self-care is to look at how do we take that image a step further? How do we put ourselves in the center of our own world, which we did within the context of the Scale series, right? Taking the time every week to look at what are the things that I'm struggling with, what am I facing in my life, and how do I want to address that? We did that. We took that step. We put ourselves in the middle. And now to take it a bit further, it's how do we create this boundary, this red circle that we see around our red figure? How do we create this boundary to maintain all the things that we incorporated within ourselves through this series, right? And we do that by putting a boundary between ourselves and other. And that boundary, it starts off being very close. We see in this image that there's space between the red image and the people around them. But often when we start looking at self-care and really incorporating it into our lives in a different way, that red circle is very close to us. And therefore, all those people are very close to us. And what self-care does is stretch those boundaries a bit to allow ourselves the space to exist and be our best, and allow ourselves the space to engage in self-care. Now, we talked about the A of acceptance. The first step of self-care, of engendering a mentality of self-care, is the acceptance of our humanity and our needs, of understanding that we are human, that we need things too, that just doing for others will not allow us to do them well. And that is just part of being human. And that is that self-compassion understanding. I want to recognize that I am infallible. I want to recognize that I have challenges. I want to recognize that I am feeling depleted, sad, angry, excited, happy, frustrated, exhausted, whatever the adjective may be. I want to recognize that I'm feeling those things, and I want to recognize how natural and human that is within the context of our world. So that's the A, acceptance. The B is boundary setting. So boundary setting looks like being able to say no, right? We can't create the space to be able to ensure we have the time for self-care if we're not saying no to one of the other things higher up on that list right now, right? So once you've come to accept your need for self-care, and you've reminded yourself that internalization, that your cup also needs to be filled, you're ready to start boundary setting and to ask yourself the questions of, what am I okay with and not okay with? What are the areas in my life that are causing me a lot of anguish that maybe I need to address? What is my no list? What are the things that are too challenging for me to do? Maybe it's visiting your loved one every day if they don't live with you. Maybe it means fulfilling certain tasks that are just too difficult. Maybe it has nothing to do with your loved one, but it has to do with your other obligations. So you might say no to checking emails for work at night, or you might say no to attending certain social obligations that you don't particularly enjoy and that you just did them because you felt obligated, but now you're saying no to that. Or maybe it's not answering your phone at night, right? Or while you're eating lunch or dinner, and saying no to that, right? So whatever the boundaries might be for you, it's taking a look at, well, what are these boundaries, right? What are these things that I'm not okay with doing? And that will allow me a little bit more space to tend to myself and put that self-care a little bit higher on the list. The next one, C, is create a schedule. It's a very common concept regarding self-care that we want to look at, well, when are we actually making the time for these things, right? If we let it be the last thing on our list and it happens when there is time, then it won't happen, right? We need to set its importance by setting it into our schedule. So we put it in at 11 o'clock, we do at 7 o'clock, we do Y. And it's just as important. We send a message to ourselves and to others about our importance and our need to put ourselves, up there on the list, so to speak. The next one is devote the time and attention to self. So when you do schedule these things, when you do create that schedule, allow yourself to devote yourself to the task at hand. Any of you that were on the webinar about becoming a mindful caregiver, or any of you that have practiced mindfulness in the past, it's about incorporating some of these concepts, your attention of being present in the moment and allowing yourself to be very attentive and mindful to whatever task you're engaging at, that you've decided is part of your self-care, that you've decided are one of those things that I want to put into my time. And we'll talk about a few examples in a minute of some ideas of what you can do. But essentially, it's ensuring that when you are doing those things, you are devoting yourself to that activity and you are fully attending to yourself in those moments. You're fully aware and present in those moments and in what you're engaging in. So somebody can take a bath and their mind can be in 10 different places, and they're sitting there worrying about, what's going to be next and how am I going to fit this into my schedule and when am I going to do that? Or they can be in the bath and be experiencing the feeling and the sensation of the warm water on their skin, right? Same thing's happening, but it's a completely radically different experience when you're actually present in it, right? The same thing with, ensuring that you're taking the time for yourself, and you're, making yourself a proper lunch or supper, and you're taking the time when you eat that supper or when you're engaging in that preparation to be really mindful. I'm doing this to ensure that I can have the energy to move forward in all my other obligations. I'm doing this so that I can be healthy and strong and well, right? So really engaging in that activity and devoting yourself to it. And the last one is enjoy. Don't allow the guilt to get in the way. And that is such a common experience for caregivers. For any of you that notice yourself feeling guilty whenever you're engaging in self-care, you're not alone. It is such a common experience to feel that guilt. And what, I want to bring that to your attention, because we want to be mindful of the fact that the guilt will come. We shouldn't be surprised by it anymore. We should know guilt will come. It's part of the process of engaging in self-care, that inner critic will say, oh, no, you can't do this. That's got to be at the bottom of the list. You have so many other things you need to do. And you might actually have people in your life saying that. You might have people in your life saying, oh, you're being selfish, or, oh, you're self-indulgent, right? Or, why are you never make time for me? And you know very well that you are making all the time in the world for them, right? And very little time in the world for yourself. And so we have to recognize that guilt will most often be part of that process. And it's a real work to be able to, uproot that and engage in self-care without that voice of guilt coming in the way. So recognizing the guilt and responding to it, right? We're noticing guilt is there. We're naming it. We're saying, oh, here's that guilt again. And responding to it by saying, yes, I am taking the time for myself. I've actually thought about this. I've actually thought how important it is for me. I've actually recognized that my cup needs filling right now. And, you can even put that image of that cup up wherever you do engage in self-care to remind yourself that guilt will come, and that this is what we need to tell ourselves to help battle the guilt. And whatever phrases help you to remind yourself that self-care is important. It is something I need to do. And it is something that is important for not just me, but all the people around me, because I can be my best self when that cup is full. I have what to give when that cup is full. So just, being able to engage in that activity with enjoyment takes that same self-care to a whole new level. So now that we've talked about, the precursors to engaging in self-care, the mindset that's required in order to engage in self-care, there's actually, I want to take a look, and I believe that you would have received a copy of this wheel just so that you can use it right now in the exercise we're going to do. But it's important to recognize that there's a number of components of ourselves that can, benefit from self-care, that can benefit from us attending to. So we have the area of professional self-care, physical self-care, emotional self-care, social self-care, and spiritual self-care. And we'll go into each one of them and give some examples of each one of them in a minute. But they can each be attended to in different ways. And, I sort of made the pie even, but it might not be even. There might be certain areas where, you've done pretty well around ensuring that you are tending to that aspect of yourself, but other areas that might need more attention. And so everybody's wheel might be different. You can draw yourself on a paper, as well, to sort of look at, what are the areas that need more of that pie and what are the areas that need less. But it's not just about, taking a bath or going for a walk. That would just be attending to one aspect of your self-care. We want to look at going through each one And writing down for ourselves as I go through each one of the areas. You can write actually inside the pie. And if you haven't printed it out, just draw yourself a circle, write these topics outside. So emotional self-care, physical, professional, spiritual, and social. And then inside the pie, you can jot down for yourself, anything that rings a bell for you that would be beneficial for you to engage in. And again, it's important to remember that these things don't necessarily take a lot of time. It's more about the work that we were doing up until now of noticing what are some of the repercussions that happen for me. What is this emotional language that I need to start using with myself, right? That is so much of the self-care process. And what flows out of that are incorporating some things that you can kind of squeeze into your day, make the time for in your day, incorporate in ways that don't really take time. But the idea and the secret with self-care is that when we make it a habit, then it's not something that we start second guessing ourselves about. It's just like we, ensure that we, eat some food in a day. We also, and we don't typically feel guilty about prioritizing just the mere fact of eating. We also don't want to feel guilty in terms of prioritizing, some of these areas of self-care when we can make them into a habit, when we make them part of our routine. So I'm going to quickly go through each of these categories. So emotional self-care can look like a number of different things. And this list is not exhaustive. I've just, kind of put some things down so that we can get your mind rolling to think of other areas that might be beneficial for you. So emotional self-care looks like learning to say no, that boundary setting we were talking about before. Being able to say no to something that's difficult for you, again, within your caregiving role or outside of that sphere, is a form of emotional self-care, right? So that doesn't take much time, right? It actually frees up some time. Intentionally scheduling me time on your calendar or planner. So scheduling the time before you even put something in it is a form of emotional self-care. You're sending yourself a message that I'm important. Rewarding yourself for completing small tasks. Let's say you have, a task within your caregiving role that's very difficult for you, changing the bed sheets or infusing some medication. And that's something that is particularly more difficult for you. So, counteracting that difficulty with a reward for yourself for even just small tasks. Developing a relaxing evening ritual is a form of emotional self-care. You're recognizing, I have a stressful day. I need to incorporate a relaxing component to it, an evening ritual that's relaxing for me. Allowing yourself to feel and express all of your feelings in a safe and appropriate environment. So not feeling like I need to bottle this up, I'm not allowed to express it. We've talked in previous webinars about expressing yourself in a way that is conducive to connection rather than, creating difficulties or boundaries, but just being able to feel all your feelings and express them in a safe and appropriate way is a form of emotional self-care. I recognize I have feelings. I recognize they are part of my experience, and doing some of that emotional intelligence, some of those emotional intelligence exercises helps to engender and be able to feel some of those feelings in a different way. Trying some of the mindful exercises to help bring you into the present moment would be a form of emotional self-care as well. Try some adult coloring as a form of anxiety or stress relief that tends to some of your emotions as well. Remind yourself of the good things in life by writing a list of the things you're grateful to have, right? You're tending to your emotion of perhaps feeling, jealous of others, frustrated of your life, wanting something else. And you're tending to those emotions by saying, let me look at what I'm grateful for. Again, something that could, at the end of the day, you can write 3 things down every day. That takes less than a minute. Taking a moment to allow yourself to be present with your emotions without judging them. So that's what we talked about in, today and in previous webinars about saying, I feel really like, I feel guilty right now. That guilt is coming into play. And I'm not going to judge that emotion. I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to allow it to be present. I'm feeling really frustrated or angry at my loved one right now, or at my situation. And allowing yourself to be present right now is emotionally caring to yourself, right? It's the same thing that you would do to a friend. You would say, you know, it's okay to feel angry. And you want to be able to do that for yourself as well. Stop being your harshest critic. Allow yourself to make mistakes and don't criticize yourself for them. So all of these things, there are things that don't take more time in your day, right? Most of these, some might take a minute or two, or, you know, a thought or two, but they really don't take a lot of time. And that's the important thing to remember, because as we started this webinar, we talked about how, you know, one of the biggest arguments towards incorporating self-care is, well, who has the time for that? And that's really, you know, if you can take anything out of this webinar, I would want you to take the fact that self-care does not need to take more time. It's about incorporating activities in your life that remind you of your importance and your need for care. Now we'll move on to another area of physical self-care. Doing some stretching exercises. And again, just if anything speaks to you, something that you would enjoy, write it down in your circle. Taking a walk, drinking more water. Again, doesn't take a lot more time. Just to go, you know, walking to the sink, filling up your cup, and coming back to whatever you're doing. Engaging your body so that you can feel fatigued, right? So you might sound opposite. Why do I want to feel tired? Engaging your bodies in activities helps you to take care of your body in a way that at the end of the day, you won't feel all this pent up stress and energy. You'll actually feel tired. So that's, you know, a benefit to your self-care. Getting a massage, going out and spending 10 minutes, you know, in sunlight or outdoors or fresh air, going for a bike ride to nowhere in particular. So this is an activity that's not about accomplishing something, but it's an activity that's about just tending to yourself and your body. Going hiking, camping, or backpacking and spending some time in nature, and going to bed early. All physical self-care activities. And again, the list is endless in terms of different things you can do. So just take a minute to maybe write down some of these that you feel like you want to incorporate on a weekly basis into your schedule, on a bi-weekly basis. And you know what I want you to do when we finish this webinar is to look at that list that you've made and think about, okay, where am I putting this in my schedule? When is this happening? Every day, every other day, every week, every other week, depending on what the activity is. The next area is social self-care. So choose who you will spend your time with today. Avoid toxic people. So that's part of that boundary setting. Choose who you want to spend that time with and allow yourself to say no to the people that you don't want to. Ask for help. Let people know that you need some help. Call a trusted friend or a family member and talk things out with them. That would be a form of social self-care. Engage in a mentally stimulating conversation with somebody about nothing at all, about something that you love, about something, you know, that interests you. Intentionally reconnect with somebody that you lost touch with or have an unresolved conflict with. So just provide yourself the opportunity for connection to somebody that you might want to connect to. Join a support group for people who are going through what you are going through. So either program through the OCO, you know, the group support that we have, or, you know, depending on what your loved one's particular illness is, there are many support groups for people who are caring within individual, you know, illness categories. Schedule a regular date night with your significant other or a friend. Take a road trip with your siblings or friends, right? So some of these, again, take more time and some of these take no time. You know, avoiding a toxic person frees up your time. Spiritual self-care could look like making time for meditation in your day, rediscovering spirituality in your life, doing something nice for somebody in secret to feel like you've enhanced your values, right? Donating money to a charity of your choosing, helping somebody in another way, maybe not with money, but with action, right? Making something nice for somebody, even picking up the phone and calling somebody that you know might appreciate it. Spending more time and attention engaging in spiritual practices that are meaningful for you. So maybe it's something that's been pushed to the side because you're so engaged in caring for your loved one, but sending yourself that message of, this is something that's meaningful to me and I'm going to make the time for it, is very meaningful. And allocating time for reflection. So, maybe instead of having somebody join you for a walk one day, you'll take that walk yourself to allow yourself that time for reflection. And lastly, we look at professional self-care. So seeking support when it's required at work. Often we feel like we have to do it on our own. We don't want to appear as needing help, but being able to reach out and say, you know what, I need help with this project. I'm not sure how to take care of this task. Establishing better boundaries to protect your work-life balance. So perhaps now, like we gave the example before, checking your emails at night, maybe that's something that you want to say no to. Creating a pleasant and comfortable work environment. It could be as simple as buying a flower pot for your desk. Now a lot of us are working at home. So, making that environment a bit more pleasant, spending a few minutes at the end of the day cleaning it up, or, going out and when you're already at the store, purchasing yourself something that, can make that environment a bit more pleasant. Think about the message you're sending to yourself when, you spend those $3 on, something that's going to neaten up your desk space. And then every time you look at that, you're thinking, I'm valuable, I'm important. How I engage in my work is important, right? That's a part of me that has nothing to do with caregiving, right? Getting involved in an interesting or stimulating work task, or other outside of your work, other interesting activities that you might enjoy in a mentally stimulating way. Taking your lunch break and using it to engage in other self-care. Often we feel like we have to, rush the work in because maybe it means that we're going to end a few minutes earlier. So really saying, you know what, no, I'm going to actually take this lunch break and I'm going to use it, to prepare myself a healthy meal, to go for a walk, whatever it might be. Turning down unnecessary or unreasonable work requests. So that's, again, working that no muscle a bit stronger, and pursuing other professional development. So these are all some examples, and the list is endless, as I said, but really to think about, how can I put these into my circle? What are the areas that spoke to me that I want to tend to more? I hope you jotted down some for yourself so that you can have that list to work with when you now go and put that into a schedule for yourself. So I just wanted to end by saying thank you to everyone who's joined today and in the previous weeks of the webinar series. I'm so honored to have had the opportunity to be a part of this program and to have met some of you personally through the individual and group support programs. It's really been so inspiring for me to see how much energy you all have put into really gaining from this program, into incorporating some of the ideas that we've spoken about, into making shifts in your own life to ensure that things change for you. And I've really heard from those who have incorporated the benefits that they've had from the program. And really, I hope that through this webinar, we can look at, how can I incorporate some of that same love and care that you put to yourself throughout the program, engaging in the program, that you can continue to do so as the weeks go by. And look out for reminders about when the next series will start, so that you can avail yourself of the opportunities that the program has, such as the group and individual support, and rewatching the webinars as we bring them back in May.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mihal.